I was invited to give the keynote address at the 5th International Forum on Marriage and Family Therapy held in China. This is an excerpt of the pre-recorded video I sent focusing on comorbidities. Please note that this video is intended for professionals. Once again, I would like to express my appreciation for the opportunity to join you today at this wonderful conference. Today I'm going to be talking about advances on what we've learned about couples who are beginning therapy. What do they need? What are the problems that you're likely to encounter as a therapist? So in this international study, we've identified major difficulties that couples are experiencing as they begin therapy that I'm going to be sharing with you. Additionally, I'm going to be talking about a blueprint I've developed on how to work with couples when there is a comorbidity. We'll be taking a relational approach. Finally, I'm going to be sharing with you some breakthrough technology in couples assessment. I hope you enjoy our time together. Thank you. Now, what do we know about comorbidities and the impact that comorbidities have? So the Gottmans have basically just completed the largest published international study on couples that are beginning therapy. And this was done through basically online questionnaires that have been part of a therapy process, which I'll talk more about in just a little bit. It's part of the assessment tool. So as they're gathering assessment information, we have couples who are willing to participate in research. And here's what we've learned. We've learned that most couples who are beginning therapy have very serious comorbidities, more distressed than actually we thought, and that these couples are more unhappy than research subjects. So university studies looking at outcomes and trying to understand the nature of couples' difficulties, these couples that are showing up in this substantial database of 40,000 couples looks at a more seriously distressed relationship than we actually thought. 90% have serious problems with conflict. So this is not a surprise to therapists. This is an area of difficulty that often leads people to therapy. And 85% of the subjects complain of not having fun. Now, granted, we've just been through and continue to go through very difficult, stressful times because of COVID and other stresses. So there's a lot of other difficulties that are part of the relationship, but are separate. They're impacting the relationship. The stress comes from other places. So that's part of what this is about, I'm certain. We look at 3/4 of this population feel they have no emotional connection, and 66% are ready to divorce or separate. So they've taken either serious steps or serious consideration. So over half of the couples that you're likely to see are kind of almost there already with not sure the relationship can work. These are the percentages of comorbidities that were found in the sample. So as you can see, 46%, one or both partners meet the criteria for depression. And that's the basic definition of the comorbidity, is that one or both partners would fall into the statistic curve here. 27%, almost 30% are experiencing anxiety, high anxiety. 30% are experiencing some form of domestic violence. And that the Gottman Research looks at situational violence as well as characterological. They're different. Situational is not as severe. The injuries are mild. There's not an identified abuser. It's sometimes mutual. So it's different, but the statistics nevertheless are about the same, about 30%. 32% of the couples are presenting with affairs, and 72% are experiencing emotional abuse within the relationship. So 3/4, that's a very high number, as you know, on the incidence of emotional abuse in the relationship. About 26% are struggling with addictions of some kind, mostly alcohol, And alcohol is, well, actually the number one killer in the world is tobacco, and alcohol is right behind it. So that's higher than other addictions in terms of mortality rates. About 21% are experiencing acute suicidal thoughts and feelings, and 70% are experiencing trauma and may very well meet the criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder. So if you look at the statistics and the prevalence of these comorbidities with couples beginning therapy, it's rather startling, I think so, to really understand just how pervasive these comorbidities are in the couples that walk in through the door to our offices and clinics. We know that trauma, of course, experienced in the family of origin becomes triggers for conflict between the couples, between the partners in the couple relationship. So this is very consistent with my research that looks at the impact of family of origin as a significant variable in the couple's effectiveness to deal with trauma and to manage trauma in the relationship. So here are some core concepts in treating couples impacted by comorbidity. And these, in the States anyway, are actually controversial in some places, not all places. The first concept is it's important for therapists to advocate for couples work. So rather than separating partners out right away and have them treated for depression or for an addictive disorder or bipolar disorder or something and separate them and have their individual treatment, it's important to advocate and say, well, you need your individual support. That's absolutely true for the both of you. But we also have a relationship that needs attention. And in some of my research, I've also found studies that support the notion is that couples work is one of the most effective ways to help people stabilize in their recovery. So rather than focusing on individual work, it's important to focus on the couple relationship, which can support individual work more effectively. And that second step. So advocate for couples work, number one. Number two, support both the individual and the relationship growth. So it's kind of what I just said a moment ago. You're not ignoring either the individual need that they both have, nor the relationship need. They can coexist. And then the other thing is to really educate on the specific comorbidity found in that relationship. So in addiction treatment, I teach clinicians the neurobiology of addiction as a disease. We know the parts of the brain that are impacted. We know the impulse control is missing because of deficits in the prefrontal cortex. So there's parts of the brain that just don't operate correctly. And so the nature of the disorder really needs to be understood. And that's true for any comorbidity. So somebody who suffers from a severe depression needs to know the neurologic basis for the neurotransmitters that are not acting in the ways that non-depressed people work. So understanding the nature of the comorbidity is very important. And then a concept I think is a very crucial concept in comorbidities is the concept secondhand harm. Now in the States, there's this concept of secondhand smoke, which looks at the impact of the non-smoker, the impact of the smoker's smoke impacting their partner. So, and the disease is related to that. When it comes to comorbidities, the same concept can apply. What has the impact of this disorder been on the partner who doesn't have the disorder? Now, it's not to blame the partner with the disorder. It's to say great harm can come to both of them because of the nature of the disorder. So I had a couple where it was a young couple where the young man had a severe back injury and trauma to his back, which made him immobile. And they would make, at times, they would make plans to go out, and then his back would give out and he couldn't do it. And the wife felt very guilty because she was so angry. And we were able to talk about this back injury that invaded their relationship. So both of them could talk about the trauma associated with this disorder without the husband feeling blamed or attacked. And that's that concept of externalizing the disorder that's invaded the relationship and then having both people talk about it without blame and without defensiveness. Then number 5 is to normalize relationship struggles. It's a very effective intervention to say it's understandable the two of you are struggling. Not that the comorbidity explains all of your relationship difficulties, but it does explain some of it. We have to talk about the impact of this thing on the both of you. So it's normal to have these kind of struggles. That can bring tremendous relief just by normalizing, say, this is what happens. You're not alone. This is very typical. These struggles you're having and the anger and the insecurity with what will happen now because of this disorder. And finally, providing tools to discuss the impact of the comorbidity. And a tool could be as simply put as this. I would like the both of you to talk about the impact of this disorder on you, how you feel about that. And we're going to do it in a way that doesn't blame the partner with the disorder, but just to step back and have both of you look at this thing that's invaded. And it's important to talk about these things, or the comorbidity can create corrosion in the relationship, and there's an underlying resentment and anger that both parties might feel, and guilt, undoubtedly. I designed a workshop for couples that I call Roadmap for the Journey. So in my research, I was able to integrate my findings within the Gottman Research and put together a series of 15 different interventions. So Roadmap for the Journey is, I have given it live, in person, I should say, as well as a live workshop virtually. I've given this to different populations, different cultural identification within these populations, and it's been very effective giving strategies to understand the nature of the disorder and to create ways to talk about it. So it's a relationship approach to addiction treatment that also could be modified to work with any comorbidity, and it's based on the principles that we just went through. The online version I hold on a 6-hour version on part 1 and a 6-hour version on part 2 that includes an hour lunch in each. And part 2 is held the subsequent week, and it's been very effective. So there's exercises that are given, and here's a strategy. And then the couples go into their virtual breakout rooms alone, just by themselves, and they can call me into the room if they need help. Then we come back and I give the next communication tool. And so there's 3 hours in the morning, we take an hour break, and 2 hours in the afternoon. And all of these strategies for communication and talking about the trauma of recovery are covered over these 2 weekend periods. And I'm very excited about the effectiveness of this workshop. And it's been looking at really early intervention with couples. And so I am collaborating with the Gottmans on research on the effectiveness right now. This is an ongoing research effort to look at the effectiveness of these approaches. The other workshop I developed is couples and addiction recovery training. And I have given this training to therapists throughout the United States and some international work. I was in South Korea, where this picture was taken, and training therapists on the model I've just been talking about, on how to help couples impacted by addiction. And currently the workshop has been videotaped, and it's available, it's in English. It's available as a class. It's a 6.5-hour training that provides a way to assess addiction, a way to treat couples that are now in recovery, and to move them from active addiction into recovery, and give counselors the skills for that. So this time was short, and I went over a lot of things very quickly. And so I know that couples therapists, we sometimes can be impatient with the lack of resources or with the lack of research. And I really think it's important to stay positive. Do not fear going slowly, fear only to stand still. As a profession, this conference reflects going forward. You're not standing still. And I commend each and every one of you for participating in this conference. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to present this information to you and wish you the best for the rest of the conference. Thank you. Hi, this is Dr. Navarra. I hope you found this video useful. If so, please hit the thumbs up button and pass the word. If you would like to receive the latest notifications of relationship tips, hit the subscribe button. Thanks.